am now recording. Alright. So last we left off was some Avatar Yoon. It's just like, hey, I've got to do a thing where I need to negotiate with some pirates. You want to come along? And Kyoshi's just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Avatar. Yeah, Avatar. And then, what's his face? Kelsang? Yeah, I think it was Kelsang. Or was it the other one? I think it was Kelsang. Hold on. Yeah, it was Kelsang. It was just like, wait, what if she's the Avatar? So he's having some doubts about Avatar Yoon, but not quite. Because he still has hope that Yoon is the Avatar. But spoiler alert, we know that he is not. Alright. Sorry, I thought I heard something. Okay, first I need to see how much I want to read. Oh, is this the big chapter? I think this is the big chapter. Oh yeah, this is a big chapter. Oh my god, yeah, this is, cause, yeah. So I'm on page 64 right now. This chapter, wait, let me do it. Let me go through it one more time. Maybe I missed a sneaky chapter, but no, I think this is all the chapter. This chapter goes from 64 to 102. Yeah, it's a big one. So I might just read this chapter. It's very big. Okay. So I'll probably I want to read for a while. So I want to get this book done with, but also like I shouldn't just, you know what? It's big enough. So all right. So the next chapter is called The Iceberg. The Iceberg. Kyoshi's nightmare smelled like wet bison. It was raining and bales of cargo wrapped in burlap splashed in the mud around her as if they had fallen from great heights, part of the storm. It no longer mattered what was in them. A flash of lightning revealed hooded figures. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Let me just read that again. Kyoshi's nightmare smelled like wet bison. It was raining, and bales of cargo wrapped in burlaps splashed in the mud around her as if they'd fallen from great heights, part of the storm. It no longer mattered what was in them. A flash of lightning revealed hooded figures looming over her. Their faces were obscured by masks of running water. "I hate you!" Kyoshi screamed. "I hate you until I die. I'll never forgive you." Two hands clasped each other. A transaction was struck. Yeah, a transaction was struck. One that would be violated the instant it became an inconvenience to uphold. Something wet and lifeless hit her in the shins. Paper sealed in oilcloth. "Kyoshi!" She woke up with a start and nearly pitched over the side of Peng Peng's saddle. She caught herself on the rail, the sanded edge pressing into her gut. The sanded edge pressing into her gut, and stared at the rolling blue beneath them. It was a long way down to the ocean. But it wasn't rain on her face, but sweat. She saw a droplet fall off her chin and plummet into nothingness before someone grabbed her by the shoulders and yanked her back. She fell on top of Yoon and Rangi, both squashing the wind out of them. "Don't scare us like that!" Yoon shouted in her ear. "What happened?" Kelsang said, trying to shift around in the driver's seat without disturbing the reins. His legs straddled Peng Peng's giant neck, making it difficult for him to see behind himself. "Nothing, Master Kelsang," Rangi rumbled. "Kyoshi had a bad dream is all." Kelsang looked skeptical but kept flying straight ahead. "Well, okay then, but be careful and no roughhousing. You don't want anyone getting hurt before we get there. Jianzu would have my head on a platter." He gave Kyoshi an extra glance of worry. He'd been caught off guard by Yoon's sudden mission, and her agreeing to tag along had amplified the strain. This treaty signing was too important to cast doubt on Yoon's avatarhood now. Until it was over, Kelsang would have to help her shoulder the burden of their secret, their lie by omission. Below them on the water surface, trailing only slightly behind them, was the ship bearing Yoon's earthbending master, as well as Hei Ran and a small contingent of armed guards. Aided by the occasional boost of wind that Kelsang generated with the whirl of his arms, the grand junk kept pace with Peng Peng. Its batten sailed billowing in full. Kelsang's bison was dry and well groomed for the occasion. Her white fur as fluffy as a cloud underneath her fancier saddle, but the stiff salt breeze still carried a hint of beastly odor. That must have been what I smelled in my dream. It had been a very long time since Kelsang had taken her for a ride, and the unfamiliar environment rattled her sleeping mind. The titanic, six-legged animal stretched its jaws wide and yawned as if to agree with her. And speaking of dressing up, Jianzu had given Kyoshi an outfit so beyond her station that she'd almost broken out in hives when she saw it. She'd thought the pale green silk blouse and leggings would have been enough finery, but then the wardrobe attendants brought in two different pleated skirts, a shoulder-length wraparound jacket, and a white sash with such exquisite stitching that it should have been mounted on a wall rather than tied around her waist. The other servants had to help her into the clothing. She didn't miss the looks they shared behind her. That Kyoshi had abused the master's favoritism. again. Favoritism. Yeah. Yeah, the other servants had to help her into the clothing. She didn't miss the looks they shared behind her back. That Kyoshi had abused the master's favoritism again. But once the pieces were assembled, they melded to her body like she'd been born toward them. Each layer slid over the next with ease, granting her full mobility. She didn't ask anyone where the clothes that fit her so well came from, not wanting to hear a snippy answer like, "Oh, Jianzu ripped them off the corpse of some fallen giant he defeated." And the serious nature of the task ahead of them made itself clear as she finished dressing. The inside of the jacket was lined with finely woven chainmail, not thick enough to stop a spear point with a person's entire weight behind it, but strong enough to absorb a dart or slash of a hidden knife. The weight of the metal links on her shoulders said the weight of the metal links on her shoulders said to expect trouble. "Why are the four of us up here and not down there?" Kyoshi said, pointing at the boat where more preparations were undoubtedly being made. "I insisted," Yoon said. Sifu wasn't happy about it, but I told him I needed time by myself. "To go over the plan?" Yoon looked off into the distance. "Sure." He had been acting strange lately, but then again, he was a new avatar about to enact a decree in one of the most hostile settings imaginable. Yoon might have had all the talent and the best teachers in the world, but he was still diving into the abyss headlong. "Your master has good reason for his reluctance," Kelsang said to him. "At one point, it was somewhat of a tradition for the Avatar to travel extensively with his or her friends without the supervision of the elders. But hey, Ran, Jianzu, and I, the three of us weren't the positive influences. The three of us weren't the positive influences on Karuk that we were supposed to be. Jianzu views that period of our youth as a great personal failing of his." "Sounds like a failing of Karuk's instead," Kyoshi muttered. "Don't criticize Yoon's past life," Rengi said, whacking her shoulder in a mittened hand. "Well, she's criticizing her own. They are not going to find out until later, and I don't know when they find out. So it's going to be, I wonder when they find out, because I'm just like, they haven't found out that Yoon's not the Avatar yet. I wonder when that's going to be. Maybe this is why this chapter is so long, but also this is like a big thing that's going to happen, so it's a pretty big chapter anyway." But yeah. "Don't criticize Yoon's past life," Rengi said, whacking her shoulder with a mittened hand. "The Avatars tread paths of great destiny. Every action they take is meaningful." They meaningfully passed another 3 dull, meaningful hours in southward flight. It got colder, much colder. They pulled on parkas and bundled themselves in quilts as they swooped over otter penguins wriggling atop ever-growing chunks of floating ice. The cry of the Antarctic birds could be heard on the wind. "We're here," Halsin said. He was the only one who hadn't put on extra layers. It was theorized around the mansion that airbenders were simply immune to the weather. Well, he might be just controlling his breath, because he is an airbender, so they can control That was a thing, right? Yeah, I think that was a thing. Or is that the Fire Nation? Well, the Fire Nation too, but like... Yeah, that's what I thought. So maybe they don't feel very cold. Yeah. Ugh. Okay. Hold on, I'm just gonna readjust all of my setup right now. Sorry for all the noise that I'm making. I'm really, really sorry. I know you can't hear it, Chandler, but the people that are going to be listening to this or going to hear this. Also, the first Kyoshi video has like 5 views. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for those 5 views. It actually does mean a lot. And since it's like a new series, like a new book, like a recent book I'm doing, it's just like, wow, that's a lot more views than I expected to get for like a recent thing. But yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Now I gotta turn on my... I cornered the market, yeah. And it's a pretty fairly new book, too. I mean, it came out last year, around this time. Sorry, I also gotta plug in my Monopoly on Good Reading. Yeah. I gotta charge my phone, because it'll take 5 hours? No thanks. Oh god, it's at 25 hours now. There we go. That's more like it. Okay. Alright. Back to where we were. The cry of Antarctic birds could be heard on the wind. We're here, Kelsang said. He was the only one who hadn't put on extra layers. It was theorized around the mansion that airbenders were simply immune to the weather. Hold on for the descent. Their target was an iceberg, almost as big as Yokuya itself. The blue crag rose into the air as high as the hills of their earthbound village. A small flat shelf ringed the formation, presumably giving them a place to set up camp. Most of the far side was obscured by the peak, but as they flew lower, Kyoshi caught a glimpse of felt tents dotting the opposite shoreline. The Fifth Nation delegation. I don't see their fleet, Rangi said. Part of the terms were that the negotiating grounds be even, Yoon said. For her, that meant no warships. For us, that meant no ground. The compromise didn't feel even. The vast iceberg was one of many, drifting in an ocean cold enough to kill in minutes. A dusting of fresh snow gave every surface flat enough to stand on a coat of alien whiteness. Kyoshi knew that though the Southern Water Tribe had long since disowned Tagaka's entire family tree, she still came from a line of waterbenders. If there was ever a location to challenge an Earth Avatar, it was here. Kelsang, landed Ping Ping on the frozen beach and hopped down first. Then he helped the others off the huge bison, generating a small bubble of air to cushion their fall. The little gesture stirred unease in Kyoshi's heart. The playful bounce like cracking jokes before a funeral. They watched Jianzu's ship come in. It was too large and deep-keeled to run aground. But there wasn't a natural harbor formation in the ice, so the crew dropped anchor and lowered themselves into longboats, making the final sliver of the journey in the smaller craft. One of them reached the shore much faster than the others. Jianzu stepped out of the lead boat, surveying the land sight while straightening his furs. His eyes narrowed and nostrils flared as if any potential treachery might have a giveaway smell to it. He followed, treating the water carefully as she decked out in her full panoply. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Panoply? Panoply? Hold on. Panoply. Okay. Treating the water carefully, she was decked. Yeah, he followed, treating the water carefully as she was decked out in her full panoply. I feel like I did not say it right. Again. Panoply. Panoply. Okay. As she was decked out in her full panoply of battle armor. The third person on the longboat was less familiar to Kyoshi. Sifu Amak, Yoon said, bowing to the man. Master Amak was a strange, shadowy presence around the compound. Ostensibly... Hold on. There's another word. Ostensibly, I think it's supposed... Yes. Ostensibly, he was a waterbender from the north who was patiently waiting his turn to teach the Avatar, but questions around his past produced inconsistent answers. There was gossip around the staff that the lanky, green-faced water tribesman had spent the last 10 years far from his home, and the employ of a lesser prince in Ba Sing Se, who'd suddenly gone from 11th in line of succession to 4th. Amok's silent nature and the web of scars running down his arms and neck seemed like a warning not to inquire further. And yet the Avatar had regular training sessions with him, though Yoon had told Kyoshi outright that he couldn't waterbend yet and wasn't expected to. He would emerge from the practice grounds, bloodied and mussed, but with his smile blazing from new knowledge. He's my favorite teacher other than Sifu, Yoon had once said. He's the only one who cares more about function than form. There must have been strategy at work with Amok's attendants. Instead of the blue tunic he wore around the complex, they dressed him in in a set of wide-sleeved robes, dark green in Earth Kingdom style, and a conical hat that shaded his face. His proud wolf-tail haircut had been shaved off, and he'd taken out his bone piercings. Amok took, Amok took out a small medicine vial with a nozzle built into the top. He tilted his head back and let the liquid contents drip directly into his eyes. Concentrated spider snake extract, Yoon whispered to Kyoshi. It's a secret formula and hideously expensive. Amok caught Kyoshi staring at him and spoke to her for the first time ever. Amok caught Kyoshi staring at him and spoke to her for the first time ever. Other than Tagaka herself, there are to be no waterbenders from either side at this negotiation, he said in a voice so high-pitched and musical it nearly startled her out of her boots. So, he pressed a gloved finger to his lips and winked at her. The iris of his open eye shifted from pale blue to a halfway green, the color of warmer coastal waters. Kyoshi tried to shake the fuzz out of her head. She didn't belong here, so far from the earth, with dangerous people who wore disguises like spirits and treated life and death situations as games to be won. Crossing into the world of the Avatar had been exciting back when she took her first steps inside the mansion. Now, the slightest wrong footing could destroy the fates of hundreds, maybe thousands. After Yoon told her last night about the mass kidnappings along the coast, she hadn't been able to sleep. More boats full of armed men landed ashore. They lined up to the left and right, spears at the ready, the tassels of their helmets waving in the frigid breeze. The intent must have been to look strong and organized in front of the pirate queen. She approaches, Toussaint said. Tagaka chose a relatively undramatic entrance, appearing on the edge of an iceberg as a faraway dot flanked by two others. She plotted a long path. Tagaka chose a relatively undramatic entrance, appearing on the edge of the iceberg as a faraway dot flanked by two others. She plodded along a path that ran around the icy slope, like a mountain pass. She seemed to be in no hurry. I guess everyone dying of old age would count as achieving peace, Yoon muttered. They had enough time to relax and then straighten back up once Tagaka reached them. Kyoshi stilled her face as much as possible and laid the corner of her eyes upon the bloody flail of the eastern sea. Contrary to her reputation, the leader of the Fifth Nation was a decidedly unremarkable middle-aged woman. Underneath her plain hide clothing, she had a laborer's build, and her hair loops played up her partial water tribe ancestry. And her hair loop. Let me say that again. Underneath her plain hide clothing, she was a laborer's build, and her hair loops played up her partial water tribe ancestry. Kyoshi looked for eyes burning with hatred or a cruel sneer that promised unbound tortures. But Tagaka could have easily passed for one of the disinterested southern traders who occasionally visited Yokuya to unload for scraps. Except for her sword. Kyoshi had heard rumors about the green enameled Gion wrapped to Tagaka's waist in a scabbard plated in a scabbard plated with burial quality jade. The sword had once belonged to the Admiral of Ba Sing Se, a position that was now unfilled and defunct because of her. After her legendary duel with the last man to hold the job, she had kept the blade. It was less certain what she'd done with the body. Tagaka glanced at the 20 soldiers standing behind them and spent much longer squinting at Kyoshi, up and down. Each pass of her gaze was like a spray of cold water icing over Kyoshi's bodily functions. I didn't realize we were supposed to be bringing so much muscle, Tagaka said to Jianzu. She looked behind her at the pair of bodyguards carrying only bone clubs, and then again at Kyoshi. That girl is a walking crow's nest. That girl is a walking crow's nest. Kyoshi could sense Jianzu's displeasure at the fact she'd drawn attention. She knew that he and Yoon had fought over her presence. She wanted to shrink into nothingness, hide from their adversaries' gaze, but that would only make it worse. Instead, she tried to borrow the face Rangi normally used on the villagers. Cold, inscrutable disdain. Her attempt at looking tough was met with mixed reactions. One of Tagaka's escorts, a man with a stick-thin mustache in the Earth Kingdom style, frowned at her and shifted his feet, but the Pirate Queen herself remained unmoved. Where are my manners? She said, giving Yoon a perfunctory bow. Hold on. Okay. I just feel like I hear like yelling and screaming like down my next door neighbor. But I think they're like the kids are just having fun. But I'm just like, are you in danger? No, but they're not in danger, I'm pretty sure. Okay. Where are my manners? She said, giving Yoon a perfunctory bow. It's my honor to greet the Avatar in the flesh. Tagaka, Marquess of the Eastern Sea. Okay. Tagaka, Marquess of the Eastern Sea, Yoon said, using her self-styled title. Congratulations on your victory over the remnants of the Fade Red Devils. She raised an eyebrow. You knew of that business? Yaki Hong and his crew were a bunch of sadistic murderers, Yoon said smoothly. They had neither your wisdom nor your ambition. You did the world a great service by wiping them out. Ha! She clapped once. This one studies like Yang Chen and flatters like Karuk. I look forward to our battle of wits tomorrow. Shall we head to my camp? You must be hungry and tired. Tomorrow, Kyoshi thought. They weren't going to wrap this up and leave quickly? They were going to sleep here, vulnerable, throughout the night? Apparently, that had been the plan all along. Your hospitality is much appreciated, Giantu said. Come, everybody. It was a very, very awkward dinner. Tagaka had set up a luxurious camp, the centerpiece of a centerpiece as year. Uh, yeah, Tagaka had set up a luxurious camp, the centerpiece a year as big as a house. The interior was lined with hung rugs and tapestries of matching colors that both kept the cold out and served as markers of how many trade ships she's plundered. Stone lamps filled with melted fat provided an abundance of light. Low tables and seat cushions were arranged in the manner of a grand feast. Yoon held the place of honor, with Tagaka across from him. She didn't mind the rest of her table being filled out by the Avatar's inner circle. Jiantu's uniformed guardsmen rotated in and out, trading snares with the Pirate Queen's motley assortment of corsairs. The Fifth Nation described themselves as an egalitarian outfit. The Fifth Nation described themselves as an egalitarian outfit that disregarded the boundaries between the elements. According to the propaganda they sometimes left behind after a raid, no nation was superior, and under the rule of their enlightened captain, any adventurer or bender could join them in harmony, regardless of origin. In reality, the most successful pirate fleet in the world has to be nearly all the sailors from the water tribes. Yeah, wait, let me say that again. I wasn't paying attention to that sentence. Yeah, in reality, the most successful pirate fleet in the world was going to be nearly all sailors. Yeah. In reality, the most successful pirate fleet in the world was going to be nearly all sailors from the water tribe, and the food reflected that. To Kyoshi, most of the meal tasted like blood, the mineral saltiness too much for her. She did what she could to be polite and watched Yoon eat in perfect alignment with water tribe custom. As Yoon downed another tray of raw blubber with gusto, Tagaka cheering him on, Kyoshi wanted to whisper in Rangi's ear and ask if they should be afraid of poison, or the prospect of the dinner party stabbing them in the back with their meat skewers. Anything that reflected the hostilities must have been bubbling under their surfaces. Why were they being so friendly? It became too much once they began setting up pie show boards for members of Tagaka's crew who fancied themselves a match for the young Avatar's famous skills. Kyoshi nudged Rangi inside and tilted her chin at the merriment, widening her eyes for emphasis. Rangi knew exactly what she was asking. While everyone's attention focused on Yoon playing three components at once, she pointed with her toe at two men. Okay. What was I? Sorry. Okay. Reggie knew exactly what she was asking. While everyone's attention focused on Yoon playing three components at once, she pointed with her toe at two men and two women who had silently entered the tent after the party had finished eating to clean up the plates. They were Earth Kingdom citizens. Instead of the pirates instead of the pirates' mismatched riot of pilfered clothing. They wore plain peasant's garb, and though they weren't chained or restrained, they carried out their duties in a hunched and clumsy fashion, like people fearing for their lives. The stolen villagers. Yoon and Rangi had undoubtedly spotted them earlier. Kyoshi cursed herself for treating them as Kyoshi cursed herself for treating them as invisible, when she knew what it was like to move unnoticed among people she served. The entire time, Yoon had been putting on a false smile while Tagaka paraded her true spoils of war in front of him. Rangi found her trembling hand and gave it a quick squeeze, sending a pulse of reassured warmth over her skin. Stay strong. They watched Yoon demolish his opponents in 3 different ways, simultaneously. The first he blitzed down, the second he'd forced into a no-win situation, and the third he'd lured into a trap so diabolical that the hapless pirate thought he was winning the whole time until the last 5 moves. The audience roared when Yoon finished his last victim off. Coins clinked as wagers traded hands, and the challengers received slaps and jeers from their comrades. Tagaka laughed and threw back another shot of strong wine. Tell me, Avatar, are you enjoying yourself? I've been to many places around the world, Yoon said, and your hospitality has been unmatched. I'm so glad, she said, reaching for more drink. I was convinced you were planning to kill me before the night was through. The atmosphere of the gathering went from full speed to a dead stop. Tagaka's men seemed as surprised as Jianzu's. The mass stillness that ran through the party nearly created its own sound. The tensing of neck muscles, hairs raising on end. Kyoshi tried to glance at Master Amok without making it obvious. The hardened waterbender was sitting away from the main group, peering soberly at Tagaka over the edge of his... the hardened waterbender sitting away... the hardened waterbender sitting away from the main group, peering soberly at Tagaka over the edge of his unused wine cup. The floor was covered in skins and rugs, but underneath was a whole island of weaponry at his disposal. Instead of freezing up like everyone else, Kyoshi could see his shoulders relaxing, loosening, ready for a sudden surge of violence. Fuck, dude, this is intense. She thought Jianzu might say something, take over for Yoon now that the theatrics were off course, but he did nothing. Jianzu calmly watched Yoon stack the pai sho tiles between his fingers, as if the only thing he cared about was making sure his student displayed good manners by cleaning up after a finished game. Mistress Tagaka, Yoon said, if this is about the size of my contingent, I assure you I meant no harm or insult. The soldiers who came with me are merely an honor guard. I didn't want to bring them, but they were so excited about the chance to witness you make history. I didn't want to bring them, but they were so excited about the chance to witness you make history with the Avatar. I'm not concerned about a bunch of flunkies with spears, boy. Tagaka said. Her voice had turned lower. The time for flattery was over. I'm talking about those three. She pointed, her fingers forming a trident. Not at Amok or any of the armored Earth Kingdom soldiers, but at Jianzu, Heiran, and Kelsang. I'm afraid I don't understand, Yoon said. Surely you know of my bending masters, the famed companions of Karuk. Yes, I know of them, and I know what it means when the gravedigger of Zulu Pass darkens my tent in person. Wait, let me say that again. Yes, I know of them, and I know what it means when the gravedigger of Zulu Pass darkens my tent in person. Now Yoon was confused for real. His smile faded, his easy smile faded, and his head tilted toward his shoulder. Kyoshi had heard of various battles and locations associated with Jianzu's name, and Zulu Pass was one of many, not a standout on a long list. He was a great hero of the Earth Kingdom, after all, one of its leading sages. I gotta keep on remembering. Jianzu is an earthbender. Kelsang is the airbender. It's just like really hard because it's like I want to believe they're both airbenders, but that's not true. Okay. Yeah, he was a great hero. He was a great hero of the Earth Kingdom after all, one of its leading sages. Are you referring to the story of how my esteemed mentor piously interred the bodies of villagers he found cut down by rebels, giving them their final rest in dignity? Yoon said. The game tiles clacked together in his palm. Tagaka shook her head. I'm referring to the 5,000 Yellownecks, buried alive, the rest terrorized into submission, the entire uprising crushed by one man, your esteemed mentor. She turned to Jianzu. I'm curious. Do their spirits haunt you when you sleep? Or did you plant them deep enough that the earth muffles their screams? There was a hollow thunk as one of the game pieces slipped out of Yoon's grasp and bounced off the board. He'd never heard of this. Kyoshi had never heard of this. Now that he was being addressed directly, Jianzu deemed it proper to speak up. Respectfully, I fear that the rumors from the Earth Kingdom interior tend to grow wilder the closer they get to the South Pole. Many tales of my past exploits are pure exaggerations by now. Respectfully, I gained my position through knowing the facts beyond what you think a typical blue-eyed southern rustic should know. Tagaka snapped. For example, I know who holds the Royal Academy record for the most accidental kills during Agni Kai's. Madam Headmistress. If Heiran was offended by the accusation, she didn't know it. Instead, Rangi looked like she was going to leap on Tagaka and cook the woman's head off her shoulders. Kyoshi instinctively reached out to her and got her hand swatted away for the trouble. And Master Kelsang, Tagaka said, listen, young Avatar, have you ever wondered why my fleets stay cooped up in the Eastern Sea, where the pickings are slim, engaged in costly battles for territory with other crews. It's solely because of that man right there. Of the three masters, only Kelsang looked afraid of... of the three masters, only Kelsang looked afraid of what Tagaka might reveal. Afraid and ashamed. Kyoshi already wanted to defend him from whatever charges the pirate might levy. Kelsang was hers more than anyone else's. My father used to call him the living typhoon, Tagaka said. We criminal types have a fondness for theatrical nicknames, but in this case, the billing was correct. Granddad once took the family and a splinter fleet westward, around the southern tip of the Earth Kingdom. The threat they presented must have been great indeed, because Master Kelsang, when then a young man in the height of his power, rode out on his bison, summoned a storm to turn them back. Sounds like a perfect solution to a naval threat without any bloodshed, huh? She said. But have any of you pulled a shivered timber the size of a geon from your thigh, or been thrown into the sea and then try to keep your head above a 30-foot wave? Tagaka drank in the airbender's discomfort and smiled. I should thank you, Master Kelsang. I lost several uncles on that expedition. You saved me from a gruesome succession battle. But the fear of a repeat performance kept the Fifth Nation and other crews bottled up in the Eastern Sea. My father's entire generation terrified of a single air nomad. They thought Kelsang was watching them from the peaks of the southern air temple, patrolling the skies above their heads. Kyoshi looked at Kelsang, who was hunched in agony. Were you? She thought. Is that where you went between stays in Yokoya? You were hunting pirates? A lesson from your airbending master, Tagaka said to you. The most effective threat is only performed once, so you can imagine my distress when I saw you bring this collection of butchers to our peace treaty signing. I thought for certain it meant violence was in our future. Yoon hummed, pretending to be lost in thought. The Paisho tile that he'd fumbled was now flipping over his knuckles, back and forth across his hand. He was in control again. Mistress Tagaka, he said, you have nothing to fear from my masters, and if we're giving credence to gruesome reputations, I believe I would have equal cause for concern. Yes, Tagaka said, staring him down, her fingers lying on the hilt of her sword. You absolutely do. The mission hinged there, on the eye contact between Yoon and the undisputed lord of the Eastern Sea. Tagaka might have been looking at the Avatar, but Kyoshi could only see her friend, young and vulnerable and literally out of his element. Whatever Tagaka was searching for inside Yoon's head, she found it. She backed off and smiled. You know, it's bad luck to undertake an important ceremony with blood on your spirit, she said. I purified myself of my past crimes with sweat and ice before you arrived, but with the stain of so much death still hanging over your side, I suddenly feel the need to do it again before tomorrow morning. You may stay here as long as you'd like. Tagaka snapped her fingers, and her men filed out of the tent, and unquestioningly as unquestioning and let me say it again. Wait, let me get some water. Let me drink some water. I have water. What was it? Okay. Tanaka snapped her fingers, and her men filed out of the tent, as unquestioningly as if she'd bent them away. The Earth Kingdom captives went last, ducking through the exit flaps without so much as a glance behind them. The act seemed like a planned insult. By Tagaka, designed to say, "They're more afraid of me than they're hopeful of you." Jianzu swung his hands together. "You did well for... Is it true?" Yoon snapped. Kyoshi had never heard Yoon interrupt his master before, and from the twinge of his brow, neither did Jianzu. The Earth Sage sighed in a manner that warned the others not to speak. This matter was between him and his disciple. "Is what true? 5,000? You buried 5,000 people alive?" That's an overstatement made by a criminal." "Then what's the truth?" Yoon said. "It was only 500? 100? What's the number that makes it justified?" Jianzu laughed silently, a halting shift of his chest. "The truth? The truth is that the Yellownecks were scum of the lowest order who thought they could plunder, murder, and destroy without impunity. With impunity. They saw nothing. No future beyond the points of their swords. They believed they could hurt people with no repercussions." He slammed his finger down on the center of the Paisho board. "I visited consequences upon them," Jianzu said. "Because that's what justice is. Nothing but the proper consequences. I made it clear that whatever horrors they inflicted would come back to haunt them. No more, no less. And guess what? It worked. The remnants of the Dao Fei escaped me, dispersed. The remnants of the Dao Fei... Hell yeah, dude. I like him even more. He just got interesting. Okay. Now I need to find the home. Okay, there we go. The remnants of the Dao Fei that escaped me dispersed into the countryside. Yeah. That's probably where Kyoshi gets it from. But then again, Kyoshi's not too close to Jianzu as she is to Kelsang, but still, yeah. Hell yeah. The remnants of the Dao Fei that escaped me dispersed into the countryside because at last they knew there would be consequences if they continued down their outlaw path. Jianzu glanced at the exit in the direction Tagaka had gone. Perhaps the reason you've never heard about this from decent citizens of the Earth Kingdom is because they see it the same way I do. A criminal like her watches justice being done and bewails the lack of forgiveness, conveniently forgetting about what they did in the first place to deserve punishment. Yoon looked like he had trouble breathing. Kyoshi wanted to go to his side, but Jianzu's spell had frozen the air inside the tent, immobilizing her. "Yoon," Kaosing said. You don't understand the times back then. We did what we had to. We did what we had to do. To save lives. The mountain in the mountain. We did what we had to. We did what we had to do. To save lives and maintain balance, we had to act without an avatar. Yoon steadied himself. How fortunate for you all, he said. His voice a hollow deadpan. Yeah, but they've been kind of not telling him the whole truth. And he just feels really, I don't know, lied to, betrayed in a way. I feel for you. I don't know. $16? Well, maybe Yoon is 16 right now, so I think that's the perfect time. Never mind. Yeah, that is true. Those times were different. But yes. We did what we had to do. To save lives and maintain balance, we had to act without an avatar. Yoon steadied himself. How fortunate for you all, he said, his voice a hollow deadpan. Now you can shift the burden of ending so many lives onto me. I'll try to follow the examples my teachers have set. Enough! Jianzu roared. You've allowed yourself to be rattled by the baseless accusations of a pirate. The rest of you, get out. I need to speak to the Avatar alone. Reggie stormed out the fastest. Hold on just 1 second. She'll take care of it still. Yeah, because she's the actual asshole. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm back. Alrighty. Um, yeah. Frankie stormed out the fastest. He ran, watched her go. Maybe it was because they used the same tight-lipped expression to hide their emotions, but Kyoshi could tell she wanted to chase her daughter. Instead, he ran, walked stiffly out of the opposite side. Yeah. Instead, Hay ran, walked stiffly out the opposite side of the tent. When Kyoshi looked back, Helsing had vanished. Only the trailing swish of an orange hem under a curtain betrayed which way he'd gone to. She gave a quick bow to Jianzu and Yoon, avoiding eye contact, and ran after the airbender. She found Helsing a dozen paces away, alone, sitting on the stool that had presumably been abandoned by one of Tagaka's guards. The legs had sunk deep into the snow under his weight. He shifted, but not from the cold. You know, after Karuk died, I thought my failure to set him on the right path was my last and greatest mistake. He said quietly to the icy ground in front of his toes. It turned out I wasn't finished disgracing him myself. Kyoshi knew, in an academic sense, that hold on. There we go. Kyoshi knew, in an academic sense, that air nomads held all life sacred. They were utmost pacifists who considered no one their enemy, no criminal beyond forgiveness and redemption. But surely exceptional circumstances allowed for those convictions to be put on hold. Surely Helsing could be forgiven for saving entire towns along the coasts of the western seas. The strain in his voice said otherwise. I never told you how far I fell within the Southern Air Temple as a result of that day. Helsing tried to force a smile through his pain, but it slipped out of his control, turning into a fractured, tearful mess. I violated my beliefs as an airbender. I let my teachers down. I let my entire people down. Kyoshi was suddenly furious on his behalf, though she didn't know at whom. At the whole world, perhaps, for allowing its darkness to infect such a good man and make him hate himself. She threw her arms around Helsing and hugged him as tightly as she could. You could never let me down, she said in a gruff bark. You could never let me down, she said in a gruff bark. Do you hear me? Never. Helsing put up with her attempt to crush his shoulder blades through the force of sheer affection and rocked slightly in her embrace, patting at her clasped hands. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Kyoshi. Kyoshi only let go when the sound of blade chattering pierced the stillness of the night. Their gazes snapped towards the crash. It had come from the tent. Yoon and Jianzu were still inside. Helsing stood up, his own troubles forgotten. He looked worried. Best if you head back to camp, he said to Kyoshi. The muffled sound of arguing grew louder through the felt walls. Are they all right? I'll check. But please, go, now. Helsing hurried to the tent and ducked through the curtain. She could hear the commotion stop as soon as he re-entered, but the silence was more ominous than the noise. Kyoshi paused there, wondering what to do, before deciding she'd better obey Helsing. She didn't want to overhear Yoon and Jianzu have it out. As she fled, the moonlight cast long, flickering shadows, making Kyoshi feel like a puppeteer on a blank white stage. Her hurried exit took her too far in the wrong direction, and she found herself among the outskirts of the pirate camp, near the ice cliff. She slammed against the frozen wall, trying to flatten. Yeah, she slammed against the frozen wall, trying to flatten. Yeah, she slammed against the frozen wall, trying to flatten herself out of sight. Tagaka's crew was in the midst of retiring for the night, kicking snow over dying campfires and fastening their tents closed from inside. They had guardsmen posted at regular intervals looking in different directions. Kyoshi had no idea how she'd come so close without being noticed. She edged as quietly as she could back the way she came, around the corner, and bumped into the missing sentry. He was one of the two pirates who'd accompanied Tagaka to greet them. The man with the mustache. He peered up at her face like he was trying to get the best view of her nostrils. "Say," he said, a rank cloud of alcohol fumes wafting out of his mouth. "Do I know you?" She shook her head and made to keep going, but he stuck his arm out, blocking her path as he leaned against the ice. "It's just that you look very familiar," he said with a leer. Kyoshi shuddered. There was always a certain kind of man who thought her particular dimensions made her a public good, an oddity they were free to gawk at, prod, or worse. Often assumed she should be grateful for the attention, that they were special and powerful for giving it to her. "I used to be a landlubber," the man said, launching into a bout of drunken self-absorption. "Did business with a group called the Flying Something Society. The Flying Something or others. Smash the patriarchy." "Oh yeah. And she's gonna smash it. Smash, smash, smash." Okay. Did business with a group called the Flying Something Society. The Flying Something or others. The leader was a woman who looked a lot like you. Pretty face, just like yours. Legs nearly as long. She could have been your sister. You ever been to Chameleon Bay? Sweet thing. You ever been to Chameleon Bay, sweet thing? Stay under Madam Chi-Chi's roof? Yeah, Chi-Chi's roof. Sorry, I just got distracted. Jesus, already an hour. This book is fucking... This chapter is very long. I'm only on page 84. So I've already read like 20 pages or something like that. Yeah, was it 20 pages? Yeah, 20 pages. I've already read 20 pages and it's been an hour. Sorry, I'm just getting distracted. Yeah. Stay under Madame Gigi's roof? The man pulled the cork of a gourd and took some more swigs of wine. I had it bad for that girl, he said, wiping his mouth on his sleeve. She had the most fascinating serpent tattoos going around her arms, but she never let me see how far they went. How about you, Honey Tree? Got any ink on that body you want to show me? Kyoshi picked him up by the neck with one hand and slammed him into the cliffside. Yes. Yes. Yes, queen. Yeah, our tall queen. Our original tall queen. Kill him right here. Hell yeah. Okay. Yeah. Kyoshi picked him up by the neck with one hand and slammed him into the cliffside. His feet dangled off the ground. She squeezed until she saw his eyes bulge in a different direction. You are mistaken. You are mistaken, she said without raising her voice. Do you hear me? You are mistaken, and you have never seen me or anyone else who looks like me before. Tell me so. She let him have enough air to speak. You crazy piece of... Kill! Ah! Kyoshi pressed him harder into the wall. The ice cracked behind his skull. That's not what I asked you. Her fingers stifled his cry, preventing him from alerting the others. I made a mistake, he gasped. I was wrong. She dropped him on the ground. The back of his coat snagged and tore on the ice. He kneeled over to his side, trying to force air back into his lungs. Kyoshi watched him writhe at her feet. After thinking it over, she yanked the gourd full of wine off his neck, snapping the string, and poured the contents out until it was empty. The liquid splashed the man's face, and he flinched. I'm holding on to this in case you change your mind yet again, she said, waggling the empty container. I've heard about Tagaka's disciplinary methods, and I don't think she'd approve of drinking on guard duty. The man groaned and covered his head with his arms. Kyoshi collapsed face down outside her tent. Her forehead lay on the ice. It felt good, cooling. The encounter had sapped her out of energy, left her unable to take the last few steps to her bunk. So close, yet so far. She didn't know what had come over her. What she'd done was so stupid it boggled the mind. If word got back to Jianzu somehow. But yeah, exactly. Hell yeah, fuck the patriarchy. But yeah, a bright light appeared over her head. She twisted her neck upward to see Rangi holding up a self-generated torch, a small flame dancing above her long fingers. Rangi looked down at her and then at the liquor gourd still in her hand. She sniffed the night air. Kyoshi, have you been drinking? It seemed easier to lie. Yes? With great difficulty, Rangi dragged her inside by the arms. It was warmer in the tent. The difference between a winter's night and an afternoon in spring. Kyoshi could feel the stiffness leave her limbs. Her nose, losing the ponderous echo it seemed to have before. Not her nose, her head. Yeah. Kyoshi could feel the stiffness leaving her limbs. She noticed Kyoshi could feel the stiffness leaving her limbs. Her head losing the ponderous echo it seemed to have before. Ranky yanked pieces of the battle outfit off her like she was stripping down a broken wagon. You can't sleep in that getup, especially not the armor. She'd taken her own gear off and was only wearing a thin cotton shift that exposed her arms and legs. Her streamlined figure belied the solidness of her muscles. Kyoshi caught herself gawking. Having never seen a friend out of uniform before, it was hard for her to comprehend that the spiky bits weren't a natural part of Rangi's body. Shouldn't you be sleeping with Yoon? Kyoshi said. Rangi's head turned so fast she almost snapped her own neck. You know what I mean, Kyoshi said. The redness faded from Rangi's ears as quickly as it came. Kyoshi right now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the redness faded from Ranki's ears as quickly as it came. The Avatar and Master Jianzu are reviewing strategy. Master Amak only ever sleeps in 10-minute intervals throughout the day, so he and the most experienced guardsmen will keep watch. The order is that everyone else should be well rested for tomorrow. They settled beneath their furs. Kyoshi already knew that she wouldn't be able to sleep as she'd been told. Her former life on the street in conjunction with her privileged place of the mansion these days meant that... Hold on. I'm not reading the sentence right. Like I should be reading it right. Yeah, they settled beneath their furs. Kyoshi already knew that she wouldn't be able to sleep as she'd been told. Her former life on the street in conjunction with her privileged place in the mansion these days meant that, and probably she'd never had a roommate before. She was acutely aware of Rangi's little movements right next to her. The air rising in and out of the firebender's chest. I don't think they did anything wrong, Kyoshi said as she stared at the underside of their tent. Rangi didn't respond. I heard from Auntie Mui about what you and the Yellownicks did to unarmed men, women, and children. And if half of what is true, then Jianzu went too easy on them. They deserved worse. Damn. The moonlight came through the seams of the tent. Yes. My queen. Oh yeah, now she's having like the same ideas. They didn't go even further, or they should have gone even further than they did. And that's what her sense of justice is. Alright. The moonlight came through the seams of the tent, making stars out of the stitch holes. She should have stopped there, but Kyoshi's certainty buoyed her along past the point where it was safe to venture. And accidents are accidents, she said. I'm sure your mother never meant to harm anyone. Two strong hands grabbed the lapels of her robe. Ranky yanked her over onto the side so that they were facing each other. Kyoshi, she said hoarsely, her eyes flaring with pain. One of those opponents was her cousin, a rival candidate for headmistress. Ranky gave her a hard jostling shake. Not a pirate or an outlaw, she said. Her cousin. The school cleared her honor, but the rumors followed me at school for years. People whispering around corners that my mother was an assassin. She spit the word out like it was the most vile curse imaginable. Given Ranky's profession as a bodyguard, it likely was. She buried her face into Kyoshi's chest, gripping her tightly as if to scrub the memory away. Kyoshi wanted to punch herself for being so careless. She cautiously draped an arm over Rangy's shoulder. The firebender nestled under it and relaxed, though she still made a series of sharp little inhalations through her nose. Kyoshi didn't know if it was her way of crying or calming herself with a breathing exercise. Rangy shifted, pressing closer to Kyoshi's body, rubbing the soft bouquet of her hair against Kyoshi's lips. The startling contact felt like a transgression, the mistake of a girl exhausted and drowsy. The more noble Fire Nation families, like the one Rangy descended from, would never let just anyone touch their hair like this. The faint, flowery scent that filled Kyoshi's lungs made her head swim and her pulse quicken. Kyoshi kept still like it was her life's calling, unwilling to make any motion that might disturb her friend's fitful slumber. Eventually, Rangy fell into a deep sleep, radiating warmth like a little glowing coal in a hearth. Kyoshi realized that comforting her throughout the night was both an honor and a torture she wouldn't have traded for anything in the world. Well, you ain't just anyone, Kyoshi. Hell yeah. Hold on. How did you get that thing? Like emote or whatever. Oh. I thought it was only for like their discords. Oh, cool. Nice. Yes, I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. Back to this long ass chapter. Man, It is super long. Maybe this chapter and the next chapter are going to be the only ones I read today, because it's a lot. Okay. Kyoshi realized that comforting her throughout the night was both an honor and a torture she wouldn't have traded for anything in the world. Kyoshi closed her eyes. She did her best to ignore the pain of her arm losing circulation and her heart falling into a pile of ribbons. They survived the night. There had been no sneak attack, no sudden chaos outside the tent, as she'd feared. Kyoshi couldn't have slept more than an hour or two, but she never felt more alert or on edge in her life. Kyoshi's in love. Hell yeah. Yeah, yeah, Kyoshi. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, getting majorly distracted right now. Alright. Kyoshi couldn't have slept more than an hour or two, but she'd never felt more alert and on edge in her life. When they breakfasted in their own camp at the base of the iceberg, she declined the overbrewed tea. Her teeth were already knocking together as it was. She looked for signs of trouble between Yoon and Jianzu, Rengi and Heiran, but couldn't find any. She never understood how they managed to wound each other. Yeah, she never understood how they managed to wound each other and then forgave each other so quickly. Wrongs meant something, even if they were inflicted by your family, especially if it was family. Kelsing stayed close by her during the preparations, but his presence only created more turbulence in her heart. Any minute now, they were going to walk up that hill and watch Yoon sign a treaty backed by the power vested in the Avatar. It's not me, Kyoshi thought to herself. Kelsing admitted there was hardly a chance. A chance is not the same thing as the truth. Jianzu signaled it was time to go and spoke a few words, but Kyoshi didn't hear them. He's jumping to conclusions because Jianzu sidelined him. He wants to be a bigger part of the Avatar's life. Any Avatar's life. And I'm the closest thing to a daughter he has. She had to admit the line of reasoning was a bit self-important of her, but much less so than, say, being the Avatar. It made sense. Kelsang was human, prone to mistakes. The thought comforted her all the way to the top of the iceberg. The peak came to a natural plateau, large enough to hold the key members of both delegations. For Yoon's side, that meant Jianzu, Heiran, Kelsey, Grangi, Amok, and despite the foolishness it implied, Kyoshi. Tagaka again, Tagaka again deigned to come with only a pair of escorts. The mustache man. The mustache man was not part of her guard this time, thankfully, but one of the Earth Kingdom hostages, a young woman who had the sunburned mane of a fishwife, accompanied the pirates. She silently carried a baggage pack on her shoulders, and stared at the ground like her past and future were written on it. The two sides faced each other over the flat surface. They were high enough up to overlook the smaller icebergs that drifted near their frozen mountain. Yeah. They were high enough up the overlook. Yeah, they were high enough up to overlook the smaller icebergs that drifted near their frozen mountain. I figured we'd use the traditional setting for such matters, Tagaka said. So please bear with me for a moment. The Pirate Queen wedged her feet in the snow and took a shouting breath. Her arms moved fluidly in the form of water bending, but nothing happened. Hold on, she said. She tried again, waving her limbs with more speed and more strain. The circle rose haltingly out of the ice, the size of a table. It was very slow going. Kyoshi thought she heard a scoff come from Avatar Amok, but it could have been the creak of two smaller ice lumps. Yeah, Kyoshi thought she heard a scoff come from Master Amok, but it could have been the creak of two smaller ice lumps spouting on opposite sides of the table. Tagaka struggled mightily until they were tall enough to sit on. You'll have to forgive me, she said, out of breath. I'm not exactly the bender my father and grandfather were. The Earth Kingdom woman opened her pack and quickly laid out a cloth over the table and cushions on the seats. With quick, delicate motions, she set up a slab inkstone, 2 brushes, and a tiny pitcher of water. Kyoshi's gut roiled as she watched the woman meticulously grind an ink stick against the stone. She was using the Pianhai method, a ceremonial calligraphy setup that took a great deal of formal training, and commoners normally never learned. Kyoshi only knew what it was from her proximity to Yoon. Did Tagaka breathe the process into her? She thought. Or did she steal her away from a literature school in one of the larger cities? Once she had made enough ink, the woman stepped back without a word. Tagaka and Yoon sat down, each spreading a scroll across the ice table that contained the written terms that had been agreed upon so far. They spent an exhaustive amount of time checking that the copies matched, that phrasing was polite enough. Both Yoon and the Pirate Queen had an eye for small details, and neither of them wanted to lose the first battle. I object to your description of yourself as the waterborne guardian of the South Pole, Yoon said during one of the more heated exchanges. Why? Tagaka said. It's true. My warships are a buffer. I'm the only force keeping a hostile navy from sailing up to the shores of the Southern Water Tribe. The Southern Water Tribe hates you, Yoon said rather bluntly. Yes, well, politics are complicated. Yes, well, politics are complicated, Tagaka said. I'll edit that to self-appointed guardian of the South Pole. I haven't abandoned my people, even if they've turned their backs on me. And it went on. After Tagaka's guards had begun to yawn openly, they leaned back from the scrolls. Everything seems to be in order. Everything seems to be in order, Yoon said. If you don't mind, I'd like to proceed straight away to the next stage. Verbal amendments. Tagaka smirked. Oh, that's real fun. That's real fun stuff. Oh no. Oh, that's not what she said. Oh, the real fun stuff. On the matter of the hostages from the southern coast of Jeishao, yeah. On the matter of the let me drink some water. I'm all dry. On the matter of the hostages from the southern coast of Jeishao province, as can be reasonably defined through proximity to Tuzin, taken from their homes sometime between the vernal equinox and the summer solstice, Yoon said. He paused. Kyoshi knew that this was going to be hard on him. Ranky had explained the basics of how people were typically ransomed. At best, Yoon could free half of the captives by sacrificing the rest, letting Tagaka save fates and retain leverage. He had to think of their lives in clinical terms. A higher percentage was better. His only goal. He would be a savior to some and doom the rest. I want them back, Yoon said. All of them. Avatar, Jianzu snapped. Avatar, Jianzu snapped. The Earthbender was furious. This was obviously not what they talked about beforehand. Yoon raised his hands, showing the back of it to his master. Kyoshi could have sworn Yoon was enjoying himself right now. I want every single man, woman, and child back, he said. If you've sold them to other pirate crews, I want your dedicated assistance in finding them. If any have died under your care, I want their remains so their families can give them a proper burial. We can talk about the compensation you'll pay later. The masters, save for Kelsang, looked displeased. To them, these were the actions of a petulant child who didn't understand how the world worked. But Kyoshi had never loved her avatar more. This was what Yoon had wanted her to see when he begged her to come along. Her friend, standing up for what was right. Her heart was ready to burst. Tagaka leaned back on her ice stool. Sure. Yoon blinked. His moment of glory and defiance yanked out from under him prematurely. You agree? I agree, Tagaka said. You can have all of the captives back. They're free. Every single one. A sob rang out of the air. Yeah, a sob rang out in the air. It was the Earth Kingdom woman. Her stoic resolve broke, and she collapsed to her hands and knees, weeping loudly and openly. Neither Tagaka nor her men reprimanded her. Alright, hold on. I just need to say goodnight to my parent. Yeah, there's no way this could backfire at all. Yeah, but I can see why this is a long chapter. Okay. Yoon blinked, yeah. Yoon blinked, his moment of glory and defiance yanked out from under him prematurely. You agree? I agree, Tagaka said. You can have all of the captives back. They're free. Every single one. A sob rang out in the air. It was the Earth Kingdom woman. Her stoic resolve broke, and she collapsed to her hands and knees, weeping loudly and openly. Neither Tagaka nor her men reprimanded her. Yoon didn't look at the woman, out of fear he might ruin her salvation with the wrong move. He waited for Tagaka to make a demand in return. He wasn't going to raise the price on her behalf. The captives are useless to me anyway, she said. She stared out to sea at the smaller icebergs surrounding them. Despite her earlier patience, she sounded incredibly bored all of a sudden. Out of 1,000 people or more, not one was a passable carpenter. I should have known better. I needed to go after people who live among tall trees, not driftwood. Yoon frowned. You want carpenters? He said cautiously. She glanced at him as if she were surprised he was still there. Boy, let me tell you a little fact about the pirate trade. Our power is measured in ships. We need timber and craftsmen who know how to work it. Building a proper navy is a generational effort. My peaceable cousins in the South Pole have a few heirloom sailing cutters, but otherwise have to make do with sealskin canoes. They'll never create a large, long-range war fleet because they simply don't have the trees. Tagaka turned and loomed over the table. So yes, she said, fixing him with her gaze. I want carpenters and trees and a port of my own to dock in so I can increase the size of my forces. And I know just where to get those things. Yokuya! Yokuya! Yoon shouted, a realization and an alert to the others, in a single word. I think I know where this is going. Tagaka raised her hand and made the slightest chopping motion with her fingers. Kyoshi heard a wet crunch and a gurgle of surprise. She looked around for the source of the strange noise. Hold on. Yeah. Kyoshi heard a wet crunch and a gurgle of surprise. She looked around for the source of the strange noise. It was Master Amok. He was bent backward over a stalagmite. A stalagmite. Yeah, he was bent backward over a stalagmite. Yeah, stalagmite. Yeah, he was bent backward over a stalagmite of ice, the bloody tip sprouting from his chest like a hideous stalk of grain. He stared at it, astonished, and slumped to the side. Come now, Tagaka said. You think I can't recognize kinfolk under disguise? The moments seemed to slowly stack up on each other like a tower of raw stones. Each event in sequence piling higher and higher, with no mortar to hold them together. A structure that was unstable, dreadful, headed toward a total and imminent collapse. The sudden movement of Tagaka's two escorts drew everyone's attention, but the two men only grabbed the Earth Kingdom woman by the arms and jumped back down the slope, the way they'd come. Shit's getting real quick. Oh yeah, this definitely went wrong. All of it went wrong. Okay. Yeah. But the two men only grabbed their Earth Kingdom woman by the arms and jumped back down the slope the way they came, dodging the blast of fire that Rangi managed to get off. They were the distraction. A pair of hands burst from the surface of the ice, clutching the ankles of everyone on Yoon's side. Waterbenders had been lying in wait below them the whole time. Rangi, Jianzu, and Heiran were dragged under the ice like they'd fallen through the crust of a frozen lake during the spring melt. Kyoshi's arms shot out, and she managed to arrest herself, chest high on the surface. Her would-be captor hadn't made her tunnel large enough. Kelsang leaped into the air, avoiding the clutches of his underground assailant with an airbender's reflexes, and deployed the wings of his lighter staff. Tagaka threw her Jian and swung it on the downstroke at Yoon's neck, but the Avatar didn't flinch. Almost too fast for Kyoshi to see, he slammed his fist into the only source of earth near them, the stone ink slab. It shattered into fragments and reformed as a glove around his hand. He caught Tagaka's blade as it made contact with the skin. Kyoshi stamped down hard with her boot and felt a sickening crush. Her foot stuck there as the bender, whose face she'd broken, refroze the water. Hold on, let me say that again. Read that again. I wasn't paying attention. Kyoshi stamped down hard with her foot and felt a sickening crush. Her foot struck where the bender whose face she'd broken refroze the water, imprisoning her lower half. Above the ice, Kyoshi had a perfect view of the Avatar and the Pirate Queen locked together in mortal knot. They both looked happy that the charade was over. A trickle of Yoon's blood dripped off the edge of the blade. Another thing you should know, Tagaka said as she traded grins with Yoon, their muscles trembling with exertion. I'm not really the waterbender my father was. With her free... no, I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm trying to skim read, and maybe, I'm not sure. But that's, oh my god. Okay, we have to keep reading. Because I don't know. I don't know. Read it. No. And that's where we'll end the chapter. In the middle of the chapter. Well, no, I would never do that. Never. Okay. With her free hand, she made a series of motions so fluid and complex that Kyoshi thought her fingers had telescoped to twice their length. A series of ear-splitting cracks echoed around them. There was a roar of ice and snow rushing into the sea. The smaller icebergs split and calved, revealing massive hollow spaces inside. As the chunks of ice drifted apart at Tagaka's command, the prows of Fifth Nation warships began to poke out, like the beaks of monstrous birds hatching from their eggshells. Or maybe she's just a really powerful bender. Yeah, I feel like she's just a very powerful bender, yeah. If she was able to do that, yeah, I think she's pretty fucking powerful. She did. Yeah. As the chunks of ice drifted apart at Tagaka's command, the prows of the Fifth Nation warships began to poke out, like the beaks of monstrous birds hatching from their eggshells. Yun lost his balance at the sight and fell to the ground onto his back. Tagaka quickly blanketed him in ice, taking care to cover his stone-gloved hand. "What is this?" he yelled. "What is this?" he yelled up at her. She wiped the blood off her sword with the crook of her elbow and resheathed it. A backup plan? Yeah, a backup plan? A head start on our way to Yokoya? A chance to show off? Wait. Okay. I thought I was still reading it in Yoon's voice, but no. "What is this?" she yelled up at her. She wiped the blood off her sword with the crook of her elbow and resheathed it. A backup plan? A head start on our way to Yokoya? A chance to show off? I've been pretending to be a weak bender for so long, I couldn't resist being a little overdramatic. Waterbenders aboard the ship were already stilling the waves caused by the ice avalanches and driving their vessels forward. Other crew members scrambled among the masts like insects, unfurling sails. They were pointed westward, toward home, where they would drive into fresh territories of the Earth Kingdom, like a knife into an unprotected belly. "Stop the ships!" Yun screamed into the sky. "Not me! The ships!" That was all he could get out before Tagaka covered his head completely in ice. Kyoshi didn't know whom he was talking to at first. Thought that in his desperation, he was pleading with a spirit. But a low rush of air reminded her that someone was still free. Kelsang pulled up on his glider and beelined toward the flagship. "Not today, monk," she said. She lashed out with her arms, and a spray of icicles no bigger than sewing needles shot towards Kelsang. It was a fiendishly brilliant attack. The airbender could have easily dodged larger missiles, but Tagaka's projectiles were enveloping storm. The delicate wings of his glider disintegrated, and he plunged toward the sea. There was no time There was no time to panic for Kelsang. Tagaka levitated. Tagaka levitated the chunk of ice Yoon was buried in, threw it over the side of the iceberg toward her camp, and leaped down after him. Kyoshi grit her teeth and pushed on the ice as hard as she could. Aw, shit, is this where we get to see her bend water or some shit? Oh my god, I love that. Yeah. Kyoshi grit her teeth and pushed on the ice as hard as she could. Her shoulders strained against her robes, both threatening to tear. The ice gripping her legs cracked and gave way, but not before shredding the parts of her skin not covered by her skirts. She lifted herself free and stumbled after Tagaka. She was lucky Yoon's prison was carved out. Had carved out a smooth path. Without it, she would have undoubtedly bashed her skull in, tumbling over the rough protrusions of ice. Kyoshi managed to slide down to the pirate camp, her wounds leaving a bloody trail on the slope behind her. Tagaka's men were busy loading their camp and themselves into boats. An elegant cutter, one of the Water Tribe heirlooms she'd mentioned, waited for them off the coast of the Iceberg. Only a few of the other pirates noticed Kyoshi. They started to pick up weapons, but Tagaka waved them off. Packing up was more of a priority than dealing with her. Give him back! Give him back! Kyoshi gasped. Tagaka put a boot on the ice casing Yoon and leaned on her knee. The Colossus speaks, she said, smiling. Give him back now. She meant to sound angry and desperate, but instead she came across as pitiful and hopeless as she felt inside. She wasn't sure if Yoon could breathe in there. Huh, Tagaka said. I saw what I needed to see in the body's eyes. I saw what I needed to see in the boy's eyes. He is worth more as a hostage than an avatar, trust me. She shoved Yoon off to the side with her foot, and the bile surged in Kyoshi's throat. At the disrespectful gesture. But you, on the other hand, Tagaka said, you're a puzzle. I know you're not a fighter right now, that much is obvious. But I like your potential. I can't decide whether I should kill you now, to be safe, or take you with me. She took a step closer. Kyoshi, was it? How would you like a taste of true freedom? To go where you want, take what you're owed. To take what you want. To go where you want, and take what you're owed. Trust me, it's a better life than whatever dirt scratch existence you have on land. Kyoshi knew her answer. It was the same one she would have given as a starving 7-year-old child. I would never become a Dao Fei, Kyoshi said, trying as hard as possible to turn the word into a curse. Pretending to be a leader and an important person when you're nothing but a murderous slaver. You're the lowest form of life I know. Oh shit, you said something and I didn't hear it. God, I hope. What were you godding I hope about? Oh, about if we get to see her bend, like, water and stuff? Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be in this chapter, obviously. The time has passed and there has been no water bending yet. Okay. Tagaka frowned and drew her sword. The metal hissed against the scabbard. Jesus, I'm just still reeling on the fact that this one fucking chapter took me 2 hours to read. That's like a very long time. And I feel like I was reading it fairly normally or fast. And I'm just like, come on, man. I wanted to read more than one chapter today. But I think I can read another chapter. Okay. Yeah. Tagaka frowned and drew her sword. The metal hissed against the scabbard. She wanted Kyoshi to feel cold death sliding in between her ribs, instead of being snuffed out quickly by water. Kyoshi stood her ground. Oh my god. Oh my god, yes! We're finally at the part... Okay, remember when I first read... before I read the book, I read, like, the back of it? Well, I'm gonna read that part now. And I think our girl is gonna waterbend. Hell yeah. At least I'm pretty sure. I recognize the thing. Yeah, she wanted Kyoshi to feel cold death sliding between her ribs, instead of being snuffed out quickly by water. Kyoshi stood her ground. Give me the Avatar, she repeated, or I will put you down like the beast you are. Tagaka spread her arms wide, telling her to look around them at the field of ice they were standing on. With what, little girl from the Earth Kingdom? She asked. With what? It was a good question, one that Kyoshi knew she couldn't have answered herself, but she was suddenly gripped with the overwhelming sensation that right now, in her time of desperate need, her voice wouldn't be alone. Her hands felt guided. Fuck, dude. Fuck if I know. Hold on, just 1 second. Where did I put the, Hold on, just 1 second. I know you're, like, dying for me to read, but... I think how they did that little excerpt... Oh, there it is. Yeah, how they did that little excerpt, it's not, like, word for word. It's gonna be, like, bits and pieces, and then... Okay, but yes, let me continue. Because I am very excited. Excuse me. Sorry for my bad manners. Someone started following me on Twitter. Cool. Alright. Yeah, it was a good question. One that Kyoshi knew she couldn't have answered herself. But she was suddenly gripped with the overwhelming sensation that right now, in her time of desperate need, her voice wouldn't be alone. Her hands felt guided. She didn't fully understand, nor was she completely in control, but she trusted. Kyoshi braced her stomach, filled her lungs, and slammed her feet in the crowding bridge stance. Echoes of power rippled from her movement, hundredfold iterations of herself stamping on the ice. She was somehow both leading and being led by an army of benders. A column of gray stone seafloor exploded up from the surface of the ocean. It caught the hull of Tagaka's cutter and lifted the ship to the side, tearing wooden planks off the frame as easily as paper off a kite. A wave of displaced water swept over the iceberg, knocking pirates off their feet and smashing crates into splinters. Out of self-preservation, Tagaka reflexively raised a waist-high wall. Out of self-preservation, Tagaka reflexively raised a waist-high wall of ice, damming and diverting the surge. But the barrier protected Kyoshi as well, giving her time to attack again. She leaped straight into the air and landed with her fists on the ice. Farther out, the sea boiled. Screams came from the lead warships, as more crags of basalt rose. Farther out, the sea boiled. Screams came from the lead warships, as more crags of basalt rose. As more crags of basalt rose in their path. The bowsprits. The bowsprits of the vessels that couldn't turn in time snapped like twigs. The groan of timber shattering against rock filled the air, as hideous as a chorus of wounded animals. Kyoshi dropped to her knees, panting and heaving. She'd meant to keep going, to bring the earth close enough to defend herself, but the effort had immediately sapped her to the point where she could barely raise her hand. Tagaka turned around. Her face, so controlled over the past 2 days, spasmed in every direction. What in the name of spirits? She whispered as she flipped her Gion over to a downward stab. The speed at which Tagaka moved to kill her made it clear that she'd be fine living without an answer. Kyoshi, stay low! Kyoshi instinctively obeyed Rangi and flattened herself out. She heard and felt a scorch of fire blast travel over her, knocking Tagaka away. With a mighty roar, Pang Pang strafed the iceberg. Rangi and Heiran blasting flame from the bisons left and right, scattering the pirates as they attempted to regroup. Jianzu held Pang Pang's reins with the skill of an air nomad, Jianzu handled Pang Pang's reins with the skill of an air nomad, spinning her around for perfectly aimed tail shots of wind that drove away clouds of arrows and thrown spears. Kyoshi had no idea they'd escaped the ice, but if any 3 people had the power and resourcefulness to pull it off, it was them. The fight wasn't over. Some of Tagaka's fleet made it past Kyoshi's obstacles, but from the nearby sinking ships, a few waterbenders declined to panic like their fellows. They dove into the water instead, generating high-speed waves that carried them toward Tagaka, her elite guard coming to rescue her. Rangi and Heiran jumped down and barraged the pirate queen with flame that she forced to block with sheets of water. Rangi's face was covered in blood, and her mother had only one good arm, but they fought in perfect coordination, leaving Tagaka no gaps to mount an offense. We'll handle the waterbenders, Hayren shouted over her shoulder. Stop the ships! Jianzu took a look at the stone monoliths that Kyoshi had raised from the seafloor and then at her. Oh, so they were stone. Was I not paying attention to that part? Or was that just unclear? I feel like that might have been unclear, but also maybe I wouldn't have. Because it seemed like she was waterbending. But maybe she was just. Oh, yeah. I was just not paying attention then. She brought the earth to her, which is really powerful. Oh, yeah. Hold on. Okay. Actually, hold on. Again. There we go. Okay. So... Okay. We'll handle the waterbenders, Hayran shouted over her shoulder. Stop the ships! Jianzu took a look at the stone monoliths that Kyoshi had raised from the seafloor, then at her. In the heat of battle, he chose to pause. He stared hard at Kyoshi, almost as if he were doing sums in his head. Jianzu! Hayran screamed. He snapped out of his haze and took Ping Ping back up. They flew towards... They flew towards the nearest formation of stone. Without warning, Jianzu let go of the reins and dropped off the bison midair. Kyoshin thought he'd gone mad. He proved her wrong. She had never seen Jianzu earthbend before. Had only heard Yoon and the staff describe his personal style as different, unusual. More like a lion dance at the New Year, Auntie Mui once said, fanning herself with a dreamy smile on her face. Yeah, Auntie Marie once said, fanning herself with a dreamy smile on her face. Stable below and wild on top. He hadn't been able to earthbend. He hadn't been able to earthbend on the iceberg, but now Kyoshi had provided him with all of his element that he needed. As Jianzu fell, flat panes of stone peeled off the crag and flew up to meet him. They arranged themselves into a manic architectural construction with broad daylight showing through the triangular gaps. A steel ramp that he land a steel ramp that he landed on without losing his momentum. He sprinted toward he sprinted toward the escaping ships in a direction he had no room to go. But as he ran, he coiled his arms and whipped around him. But as he ran, his arms coiled and whipped around him like they had minds of their own. He flicked his fists using minute twists of his waist, and countless sheets of rock flattened themselves into a bridge under his feet. Jianzu never broke stride as he traveled on thin air, suspended by his on-the-fly earthworks. Fire blasts and water sprouts. Fire blasts and water sprouts shot up from the benders manning the ships. Jianzu nimbly leaped and slid over them. The ones aimed at the stone itself the ones aimed at the stone itself did surprisingly little damage, as the structure was composed as chaotic, redundant races. He raced ahead. He raced ahead of the lead ship, crossing its path with his bridge. Right as Kyoshi thought he'd extended too far, that he'd run out of stone and thinned his support beyond what it could hold. He leaped to safety, landing on top of a nearby ice floe. The precarious, unnatural assembly began to crumble without Jianzu's bending to keep up. The precarious, unnatural assembly began to crumble without Jianzu's bending to keep it up. First, the individual pieces began to flake off. Chunks of falling rock bombarded the lead ship from high above, sending the crew members diving for cover as the wooden deck punctured like leather before an awl. But the suffering had only begun. The base of the bridge simply let itself go, bringing the entire line of stone down across the prow. The ship's aft was levered out of the waterline, exposing the rudder and the barnacled keel. The rest of the squadron didn't have time to run. One follower angled away from the disaster, and it managed to avoid crashing its hull. But the change of direction caused the vessel to tilt sharply to the side. The tip of its rigging caught on the wreckage, and then the ship was beheaded of its masts and sails. The wooden pillar snapped off, the child's sway breaking at its weakest points. The last remaining warship bringing up the rear might have made it out, assuming some dazzling feat of heroic seamanship. Instead, it wisely decided to drop anchor, call it quits. Instead, it wisely decided to drop anchor and call it quits. If Tagaka's power was in her fleet, then and the Avatar's companions had destroyed it. Now they just had to live long enough to claim their victory. You did good, kid. Yeah, you did good, kid, said a man in a husky voice, and an accent like Master Amok's. They'll be telling stories about this for a long time. Kyoshi spun around, afraid a pirate had gotten the drop on her, but there was no one else. The motion made her dizzy, too dizzy. She sank to her knees, a drawn-out, lengthy process, and slumped onto the ice. And that is the end of that chapter. I think that was Karuk. If it had an accent like the like the master waterbender Amok, I think that might have been Karuk. Yeah, that would be cool, right? Okay, so I'm like really debating whether I should read another one. It's only 10 more pages, but I'm just like, fuck, dude. That's a lot of reading. And I fucking, this will be a really long session if I keep on reading, because I'm already at 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours of reading. I'm gonna go ahead and decide to read the next chapter, but only the next chapter. Because, yeah. Okay. The next chapter is called The Fracture. So, The Fracture. It was warm. So warm that when Kyoshi woke up in the Machin's infirmary, she thought it would be Rangi sitting in the chair by the bed. She hoped it was. Instead, it was Jianzu. Kyoshi clutched her blankets tighter and then realized she was being silly. Jianzu was her boss and her benefactor. He'd given Kelsang the money to take care of her. And while she'd never crossed the courteous distance that lay between them. There was no reason to feel uncomfortable around the Earth Sage. That was what she told herself. Her throat burned with thirst. Jianzu had a gourd of water at the ready, anticipating her need, and handed it over. She tried to gulp it as decorously as she could, but spilled some on her sheets, causing him to chuckle. I always had a hunch you were hiding something from me, he said. She nearly choked. I remember the day you and Kelsang told me about your problem with earthbending, Jianzu said with a smile that stayed firmly on the lower half of his face. You said that you could manipulate small things, that you could only move good-sized boulders of a regular shape, like a person whose fingers were too thick and clumsy to pick up a grain of sand. That was true. Most schools of earthbending didn't know how to deal with a weakness like Kyoshi's. Students started out bending the smallest pebbles, but as their strength and technique grew, they moved to bigger and heavier chunks of earth. Despite Kelsang's protests, Kyoshi had long since decided that she wouldn't bother formally training. Yeah. Despite Kelsang's protests, Kyoshi had long since decided that she wouldn't bother formally training in bending. It didn't seem like a problem worth solving at the time. Earthbending was mostly useless indoors, especially so without precision. You didn't tell me the reverse was applied. You didn't tell me the reverse applied. Yeah, let me say that again. I feel like I said that weird. You didn't tell me the reverse was. You didn't tell me the reverse applied. I feel like I'm saying reverse weird, but I'm not. I'll just say it one more time. You're good. I know I'm good, but I feel like I'm saying a verse or something instead of reverse. I don't know. It's bothering me. I will say it fine. I will do it as many times as I have to. If I have to say it right. Goddamn. You should know this. It's not like I'm not getting mad about it. That's a good thing. It's just, it's like a little bit annoying that I feel like I know I'm saying it right, but I feel like I'm not saying it right. Okay. You didn't tell me the reverse applied, Jianzu said. That you could move mountains and you were separated from the ocean. And you were separated from the ocean bed by 200 paces. Not even I can summon Earth from across that distance, or across water. The empty gourd trembled as she put it on the bedside table. I swear I didn't know, Kyoshi said. I didn't think I could do what I did, but Yoon was in danger, and I stopped thinking, and where is Yoon? Is he okay? Where's Kelsang? You don't need to worry about them. He slumped forward in his chair with his elbows on his knees. His fingers knotted together. His clothes draped from his joints in a way that made him look thin and weary. He stared at the floor in silence for an uncomfortably long time. The Earth Kingdom, Jianzu said. It's kind of a mess, don't you think? Kyoshi was more surprised by his tone than his random change of subject. He'd never relaxed this much around her before. She didn't imagine he spoke this informally with Yoon. I mean, look at us, he said. We have more than one king. Ooh, interesting. Northern and southern dialects are so different, they're starting to become separate languages. Villagers in Yokoyo wear as much blue as green, and the Sea Wang people barely share any customs with the rest of the continent. Kyoshi had heard Kelsang express admiration for the diversity of the Earth Kingdom on several occasions, but perhaps he was speaking from the perspective of a visitor. Jianzu made the Earth Kingdom sound like different pieces of flesh stitched together to close. Yeah. Jianzu made the Earth Kingdom sound like different pieces of flesh stitched together to close a wound. Did you know that the word for Dao Fei doesn't really exist in other nations? He said. Across the seas, they're just called criminals. They have petty goals, never reaching far beyond personal enrichment. But here in the Earth Kingdom, Dao Fei find a level of success that goes to their heads and make them believe. Sorry, I'm wearing my glasses for this, and now my glasses are like starting to hurt my ear a little bit. But that's because I haven't been wearing them that much. But I make it a point to wear them when I read. Because that's a good choice, at least. need to have them when I'm reading, at least. Or when I'm playing video games. Okay. But here in the Earth Kingdom, Dao Fei find a level of success that goes to their heads and make them believe they're a society apart, entitled to their own codes and traditions. They can gain control over territory and get a taste of what it's like to rule. Some of them turn into spiritual fanatics, believing that their looting and pillaging is in service to a higher cause. Jianzu said, It's all because Bossing Say is not a truly effective authority, he said. The Earth King's power waxes and wanes, and it never reaches completely across the land as it should. Do you know what's holding the Earth Kingdom together right now in its stead? She knew the answer, but she shook her head anyway. Me. He didn't sound proud to say it. I am what's keeping this giant ramshackle nation of ours from crumbling into dust. Because we've been without an avatar for so long, the duty has fallen on me. And because I have no claim on leadership from noble blood, I have to do it solely by creating ties of personal loyalty. He glanced up at her with sadness in his eyes. Every local governor and magistrate from here to the northern air temple owes me. I give them grain in times of famine. I help them gather the taxes to pay the police salaries. I help them deal with rebels. My reach has to extend beyond the Earth Kingdom as well, Jianzu said. I know every bender who might accurately call themselves a teacher. Of the elements in each of the 4 nations, and who their most promising pupils are. I've funded bending schools, organized tournaments, and settled disputes between styles before they ended in blood. Any master in the world would answer my summons. She didn't doubt it. He wasn't a man given to boasting. More than once around the house, she'd heard the expression of Jianzu's word, his friendship. More than once around the house, she'd heard the expression that Jianzu's word, his friendship, was worth more than Beifang gold. Another person might have swelled with happiness while looking back over the power they wielded. Jianzu simply sounded tired. You wouldn't know any of this, he said, other than the disaster on the iceberg. You've never really been outside the shelter of Yokoya. Kyoshi swallowed the urge to tell him that wasn't true, but she still remembered the brief glimpses she'd seen of the greater world long ago. But that would have meant talking about her parents, opening a different box of vipers altogether. Just the notion of exposing that part of her to Jianzu caused her pulse to quicken. He picked up on her distress and narrowed his eyes. So you see, Kyoshi, he said, without personal loyalty, it all falls apart. He made a sudden bending motion towards the ceiling, as if to bring it crashing down onto their heads. Kyoshi flinched before remembering the room was made of wood. A trickle of dust leaped through the roof beams and lay suspended in the air, a cloud above them. Given what I've told you, he said, is there anything you want to tell me? About what you did on the ice? Was there anything she wanted to tell the man who had taken her off the street? That there was a chance he'd made a blunder that could destroy everything he'd worked for, and that his very existence might spell untold chaos for their nation? I'm the Avatar dude. Obs. Obs, dude. Yeah. Was there anything she wanted... Yeah, was there anything she wanted to tell the man who had taken her off the street? That there was a chance he'd made a blunder that could destroy everything he'd worked for, and that his very existence might spell untold chaos for their nation? No. She and Kelsang had to wait it out. Find evidence that she wasn't the Avatar. Give Yoon the time he needed to prove himself conclusively. I'm sorry, she said. I truly wasn't aware of my own limits. I just panicked and lashed out as hard as I could. Ranky told me she often firebends stronger when she's angry. Maybe it was like that. Jianzu smiled again, the expression calcifying on his face. He clapped his hands to his knees and pushed himself up to standing. You know, he said, I've fought Dao Fei like Tagaka across the length and breadth of this continent for so long that the one thing I've learned is that they're not the true problem. They're a symptom of what happens when people think they can defy the Avatar's authority, when they think the Avatar lacks legitimacy. Keep her down at Kyoshi. I'm glad there's at least one more powerful earthbender who can fight on my side. Despite what I said earlier, I'm only a stopgap. Despite what I said earlier, I'm only a stopgap. Why did they combine those two words together? I hate it. I'm only a stopgap. I'm only a stopgap measure, a substitute. The responsibility of keeping the Earth Kingdom stable and in balance with the other nations rightfully belongs to the Avatar. The unrelenting pressure of his statements became so great that Kyoshi instinctively tried to shift the weight onto someone else. It should have been Karuk dealing with the Dao Fei. She blurted out. Yeah, it should have been Karuk dealing with the Dao Fei. She blurted out. Shouldn't it? Jianzi nodded in agreement. If Karuk were alive today, he'd be at the peak of his powers. I blame myself for his demise. His poor choices were my fault. How could that be? Because the person who has the greatest responsibility to the world, after the Avatar, is the person who influences the way the Avatar thinks. I taught Karuk earthbending, but I didn't teach him wisdom. I believe the world is still paying for my mistake in that regard. Jianzi paused by the door as he left. Yoon is down the hall, Kelsang across from him. You should rest more, though. I would hate to see you not well. Kyoshi waited until he was gone. Kyoshi waited until he was gone. Enough time for him to exit the infirmary completely. Then she burst out of bed. She padded down the hallway, rattling the planked floor, and after a frantic moment of hesitation, entered the Avatar's room first. Yoon sat in a chair next to a copper bathtub with his right sleeve rolled up to his shoulder. His arm rested in the streaming water. Yeah, his arm rested in the streaming water. Ranky stood behind him, leaning on the windowsill, staring at the far corner. Hold on. There we go. I needed to crack my knee. Where was I? Oh, excuse me. Yeah, his arm rested in the streaming water. Rangi stood behind him, leaning on the windowsill, staring at the far corner. I keep telling the healers I don't have frostbite, Yoon said. This must have scared them. He raised his dripping hand. It was still stained with black ink, giving it a plastic, necrotic look. Yoon picked up a teapot of hot water from the floor and poured it carefully in the bath to maintain the temperature. He dumped his hand back under the surface and swirled it around. Kyoshi's first instinct to run over to them and embrace them joyfully, to thank the spirits that they were alive, to see a bit of that happiness reflected back in their eyes. The three of them made it back home, safe, together. But Yoon and Rangi looked like their minds were still floating somewhere in the southern ocean, vacant and distracted. What happened? Kyoshi asked. Is everyone okay? Is Kelsey hurt badly? Yoon Wayne... Let me get some water. There we go. Yoon waved at her with his dry hand to keep quiet. Yoon waved at her with his dry hand to be quiet. Master Kelsing is sleeping, so we should keep it down. As if she were the biggest detriment to Kelsing's health right now. Fine, she hissed. Now will you tell me what happened? We lost a lot of guardsmen, Yoon said, his face shifting with pain. Tagaka's hidden waterbenders dropped an avalanche on them. Rangi and Heiran managed to save those they could by burning through the side of the iceberg after it thinned. Rangi didn't budge at the mention of her name. She refused to lift her head, let alone speak. They freed me, and between us, we managed to knock Tagaka out, Yoon went on. Losing their ships and seeing their leader defeated was too much for the rest of the fleet. Yeah. They freed me, and between us, we managed to knock Tagaka out. Yoon went on. Losing their ships and seeing their leader defeated was too much for the rest of the Fifth Nation forces, and they fled. You should have seen it. Pirates clinging to the wreckage while waterbenders propelled them away. The loss of dignity probably hurt more than the falling rocks. What happened to Tadaka? What happened to Tadaka? Kyoshi asked. She's in the brig of an Earth Kingdom caravan heading for the capital, where she'll be taken to the prisons of Lake Laogai, he said. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do about the lake part of it, if she can waterbend like that. But I have to assume that at least someone in Earth Kingdom's administration has a plan. In the meantime, the Fifth Nation is no more. At her look of confusion, Yoon gave her the exact same wand. For yeah. At, at her look of confusion, Yoon gave her the exact same one forced smile that his master did a few minutes ago. Their ships have been damaged. Their ships have been damaged beyond repair. He explained. Tagaka said it herself. Her power lies in her fleet. After what you did, it'll be nearly impossible for our successors to rebuild. Yeah. After what you did, it'll be nearly impossible for her successors to rebuild. They won't pose a threat to the Earth Kingdom anymore. Kyoshi supposed that was true, and that she should be happy to hear it. But the victory rang hollow. What about the captives? Jianzu caught one of her lieutenants and interrogated their location out of him, Yoon said. Heiran pulled a few strings, well, maybe more like the whole rope, and now the Fire Navy is mounting a rescue operation in an act of goodwill. It'll be the first time they've been allowed to fly military. They've been allowed to fly military colors in the Eastern Seas since the reign of the 22nd Earth King. He was giving her answers, but nothing else. No emotion she could hook her fingers around. Hadn't he wanted her there as a confidant? Someone who could be awed by his successes? Yoon, you did it, she said, hoping to remind him. You saved them. In her desperation, she borrowed a line from the imaginary voice that had spoken to her on the ice. People will talk about this for ages to come, she said. Avatar Yoon, who saved whole villages. Avatar Yoon, who went toe-to-toe with the pirate queen of the Southern Ocean. Avatar Yoon, Kyoshi, stop it! Rangi cried out. Just stop! Stop what? Stop what? Kyoshi yelled, feeling nearly sick with frustration. Stop pretending like everything's the same as it was, Rangi said. We know what you and Kelsang were hiding from us. The floor spiraled around from Kyoshi's feet. Her foundations turned to liquid. She was grateful when Rangi marched up to her and planted an accusing finger in her chest. It gave her a point to stabilize on. How could you keep that from us? The firebender shouted in her face. Was it funny to you? Making us look like fools? Knowing there's a chance that all our lives are a gigantic lie. Kyoshi couldn't think. She was enfeebled. It wasn't... Ranki's finger began to heat up and smoke. What was your angle, huh? Were you trying to discredit Yoon? Jianzu, maybe? Do you have some kind of twisted secret desire to see the world fall apart at the seams? The burn reached her skin. She didn't pull away. Maybe she deserved to be punched straight through. A red-hot hole in her chest. Answer me! Rangi screamed. Answer me, you... Kyoshi closed her eyes, squeezing out tears, and readied herself for the blow. It never came. Rangi stepped back, aghast, hands covering her mouth, realizing what she was doing, and then barreled past Kyoshi out the door. The room swayed back and forth, threatening to force Kyoshi down on all fours. Yoon stood up, navigating the thrashing floor with ease. He came closer, his lips parting slightly. She thought he was going to whisper something reassuring in her ear. And then he sidestepped her, slid right by, with a layer of empty space between them as impenetrable as steel. She had one more stop to make. Kelsang was waiting for her, propped up to the sitting position in his bed. There was a half-eaten bowl of seaweed soup on his bedside table, a remedy for blood loss. His skin was paler than the bandages swaddling his torso. Even the blue of his arrows seemed faded. "We woke you up." Kyoshi was surprised at how hard her voice was. She should have been relieved to pieces that he wasn't dead, and instead she was on the verge of snarling at him. "You need to be resting." "I'm sorry," he said. "I had to tell them." "Did you?" "What I said about Yoon having the greater chance of being the Avatar isn't true anymore. Not after what you accomplished on the Iceberg." Kelsang ran his hand over his shaved head, feeling for the ghost of his hair. "You were asleep for 3 days, Kyoshi. I thought your spirit had left your body. There was no more pretending." Something delicate inside her snapped at hearing "pretend." The people closest to her were suddenly calling the years they'd spent together fake, imaginary, a made-up prelude to a different, more important reality. "You mean you couldn't wait any longer to make your move?" she said, unable to control her bile. "You wanted to teach an Avatar who depended on you more than Jiansu, and you lost your chance with you. That's what I am to you. A do-over." Kelsang looked away. He leaned back against his pillow. "The time when any of us could have what we wanted passed years ago," he said. And that is the end of that chapter. What a fucking doozy. Oh fuck, dude, what's gonna happen next? Find out more tomorrow. Man, right, that's hella rough. Yeah, I feel bad for Kyoshi. Okay, but yeah, like, Yoon is probably devastated. Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. Officially 3 hours that I have read, and I will close this. I think this is like one of my longest sessions. Jesus. All right, but thank you so much for listening. That was a long chapter. It was a long chapter, and then there was a shorter chapter. Fuck, dude. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Fucking gross. Fucking motorcycles. Anyway. you will hear from me next time. Thank you, and goodbye. Oh, did I not stop recording? Oh.